Blog Talk Radio.
So you said that he drugged and assaulted you. You said multiple times.
Yes.
Right? You were a teenager, an
Yes.
aspiring actress. What do you believe happened?
Well, there were several occasions that I woke up out of a very confused state, not in my clothes. There was an occasion at his brownstone in New York City where I had gone for dinner and had one glass of wine with dinner. There were staffers there. The house was mingling with people. And before I knew it, I was with my head over the toilet, throwing up, and he was holding my hair out of my face while I threw up, and I was in a white T-shirt and my panties, and he was looming over me in a white robe.
Mm-hmm. And so you were at his house at a dinner party, or were you there to be with him?
I was there alone, and he had been mentoring me and grooming me. Mm-hmm. I'm from Denver, Colorado, and when I was 17, my agent introduced me to him to groom me, to mentor me, to get me ready for show business, and part of that was bringing me to New York City.
Did he ever make advances towards you when you weren't, because you believe that you were drugged, when you weren't drugged, did he make advances towards you?
It was a very controlling and manipulative environment. It was very, very controlled, very isolated, and there were twisted things. There were telltale signs.
But nothing overt.
There was something pretty overt in Reno, Nevada. Mm-hmm. But by that time, I was very much under control and under his thumb, and I don't recall that there were drugs involved in that.
After the initial time you spent, you said Reno, Nevada, you also went to, I believe, Atlantic City, and you put yourself in a position to be close to him again. What, was that naivete? Was that youth? Why would you do that?
I would say that is, it's so many different things. Victims of sexual assault go through so many different things. Mm-hmm. I was young. I was in New York City. He and my agent were subsidizing my housing and my acting classes, and my job was to focus on acting, do what I was told, stay on the straight and narrow. And when things started to happen with him, I couldn't go to my agent. I was terrified of her, and I was terrified of him. And he would say things, if I started to ask questions, or I would get, the confusion from the drugs, and I'd be asking questions, he'd say, well, you were drunk. And I would say, well, I wasn't drunk, but I can't let my agent know I was, in that position. I'm supposed to be working hard in New York.
How do you think he drugged you? Do you have any idea? No?
I never saw any drugs, but I would wake up completely confused, half-dressed, and knowing that my body had been touched without my permission.
You have struggled over the years to have your allegations taken seriously, and it wasn't until a comedian recently talked about it, and this is, some time later, almost 30 years later.
Actually, no. I've been speaking out publicly and trying to have the story believed and heard since 2004.
Do you think it's been taken seriously enough?
It's starting to. I'm really glad now. It's a relief to know that the critical masses are starting to finally pay attention. It's been a long, hard, lonely, dark road.
You've never taken legal action, though.
I didn't. No, I didn't. And I didn't. Why didn't I? Well, I tried. I told my agent one time. She did not believe me. A friend of mine in '89 took me to an attorney. He laughed me out of the office. At that point, nobody would believe me. He was Dr. Huxtable. He was America's dad. Everybody loved him. I loved him. I wanted him to be my dad. And nobody believed me. And I was so broken down at that point and had gone through so much of having my mind completely manipulated. When I got kicked out of New York City, they put me back to Denver with the clothes on my back. My things got locked in the apartment. I had to sue to get my things back. I regrouped, came back to New York, and I just said, I just have to put this away. I have to just get on with my life.
Cosby, through his attorneys, repeatedly denied sexually assaulting anyone. Now, this is according to the Washington Post. A representative for Bill Cosby did not return multiple calls and emails from Washington Post staff for comments on Barbara's op-ed. Today, we spoke to a representative of Bill Cosby's who didn't want to address the resurfacing of the allegations.
And good evening, everybody, and thank you for choosing King Jordan Radio. This is King Jordan you're listening to for November 20th, 2014. Today we have a very special guest. He is a New York City defense attorney. He's also a CNN legal analyst. Today we'll go over Bill Cosby, Adrian Peterson, Ferguson, Ray Rice, and more. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the program the one, the only, Richard Herman. Good evening, Richard. How are you?
Good evening, King Jordan. How are you?
Okay, Richard, you're the legal analyst. What do you think of all these belated claims said at the committee? Is it true or is it false? What's your interpretation?
Here's the thing. Nobody is ever going to know. We're not going to know what went on here. We're just not going to know. And there's a statute of limitations, which means there's a period of time within which you can bring a civil lawsuit, and there's a period of time within which the government or the state can prosecute a case criminally. There's a reason for statutes of limitations. It's to preserve evidence. It's to make sure matters are brought in a timely fashion. So what we have now, 30, 40 years after the fact, are people regurgitating facts and circumstances and events that either they think took place in their life or maybe did take place. But they never made a move at the time or at or about the time these events took place. And that is the critical problem here. There are divisions and district attorneys' offices that are set up with experts to handle domestic abuse, to handle any type of sexual assault cases. There are experts. There are psychiatrists, psychologists. There are detectives. There are people there who can do it, who are trained to do this. And all these people, none of them took advantage of that. So what's happened here is, how can you believe these stories? I mean, how can you? It's rising to the level beyond absurdity at this point, where people are crawling out of the woodwork, where they claim to have gone out with him, gone back to his apartment with him, had drinks with him, took pills with him, and oh my God, I think we had sex. I mean, it is beyond belief. It is really incredulous at this time, and all these people, however they have created history in their minds. I mean, think back on what you had for dinner 2 weeks ago. Think back on what happened a couple months ago. Think back a year ago, 2 years ago. These people are talking about events that took place 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And sometimes over the course of time, I played ball, so some of the games I played in when I was in high school, if you ask me about them now, I mean, they're going to be a little different than when I played back then, It's just people have a tendency, their imaginations wander a little bit. And I say that, and I don't say that to put anybody down. I'm not putting them down. I think they're pathetic, all these people, actually, because they didn't do anything, and they should have done something. And people who claim to be supermodels, who I don't even know how they can make that claim, but, anyway, why didn't you do something at the time? Go have a district attorney take the case. And the district attorneys who heard some of these claims rejected them. They said, we don't have a case. There is no case here. There's no case to bring. We cannot bring a case. So then they can do a lesser standard of proof, burden of proof, and bring a civil case against him for assault. But they haven't done it. Nobody has done that. So, Bill Cosby is in a lose-lose situation because he has absolutely no reason to comment on any of this insanity, which he's not doing. And if he was my client, I'd tell him also, he had blanket denial. He's never been convicted of a crime. He's never been sued civilly and had a judgment against him for any of these allegations. So he's in a lose-lose, because now, because of the public uproar, he's losing endorsement deals, he's losing Netflix, turn them down, he's losing TV shows, he's getting annihilated, and there's really nowhere for him to go. And I heard my old buddy Nancy Grace claiming, "Whoa, he should have brought defamation claims here against these people. That would prove to us." He doesn't have to. He's in his mid to late 70s. He's going to waste money suing in civil court for defamation and perhaps getting a judgment against these people where he can wipe his butt with the judgment, because none of these people have any money. It's absurd. You know what? It's absurd, and it's pathetic, and it's a lose-lose for Bill Cosby. I mean, I'm not in awe of Bill Cosby. Everybody watched him growing up. He's a talented actor and comedian. But it's not right what's going on right now. It's really, there's something wrong with the system where people can come out of the woodwork and move the rock and crawl out from behind the rock and spew these allegations, and these are very serious allegations, with absolutely nothing to corroborate what they're saying. Just let it out and let the damage fall on someone who is in the public eye, who spent a lifetime building a career. He's getting annihilated right now, and there's really nothing he can do.
So let me play devil's advocate. If you are these people, why would you want to come out and say such horrendous things? A, if you're not going for any money. B, doesn't that make it more truthful?
It doesn't make it more truthful. You've got the choo-choo train running here. So a few people are making allegations. A few news organizations are covering them. So people are just coming out of the woodwork. They're coming out of the woodwork now. There's stories today. There's more people today claiming this. If this guy was such a predator all his career, you would think that someone would prosecute this guy. You think that some district attorney would take the case. Nobody took it.
But
there were no
you would
claims.
agree, though, it would be hard to prosecute a man, especially in the peak of his career, Bill Cosby. You know how big he was in the 80s. He was Superman back then. I mean, if you were a prosecutor, would you really want to take on Bill Cosby if you're getting
some
claims?
Some prosecutors want to make a name for themselves. This would be a great feather in their cap, a great stripe on their shoulder, on their sleeve, to take down Bill Cosby in a case like this, a horrific sexual assault or rape case. They would love to get that under their badge, but it's not going to happen because these stories are ridiculous. They're beyond ridiculous. And these people are pathetic. They really are pathetic for making these allegations now, 30, 40 years after the fact. It's gotten beyond absurd right now. It really has.
What would be their motivation, though?
Their motivation is, who knows? A supermodel who's got zero career, nobody sees her name. Why does she all of a sudden get now interviews with all these agencies? Why do these washed up actresses or these no talent people that are making millions, why do they take selfies of themselves and nude pictures of themselves and throw them on the internet and say, "Oh, I didn't mean to do that"? Why do they do that? Because they're pathetic, and they're publicity whores, and they want to get their name out there. The sun is set on their careers or whatever else they were doing, and people have a tendency to recreate history and look at events and circumstances and change them and mold them. And today's society is certainly different than what it was 30, 40 years ago, and the tolerance for certain behaviors is not the same today as it was back then. But still, mechanisms were in place. You have to have evidence must be tested, and it must be tested by cross-examination. Whether it's oral testimony or it's documentary testimony, you have to have the ability to cross-examine it or impeach it. And that's the way you know if the evidence is credible and believable. And so these people are getting freebies. They're just taking shots at him right now, and nobody is questioning them. Nobody is delving into the foundation for the statements that they're making. They're just getting freebies, and they're taking their shots at Bill Cosby. And he's, pretty much, I think his career is finished. I think Vegas is the only venue that hasn't terminated him right now. I think he has some shows lined up, and he'll probably be packed. He'll probably get standing ovations.
Do you believe that each and every accuser is making up the story or bending the story? What's your opinion on that? Do you think something happened and they're exaggerating it?
when you sit back and hear one after the other come forward, it's like, in court in a criminal case when the government puts up all these witnesses against a defendant, and then in summation they stand in front of the jury and say, it's a rough day for the defendant here because he's claiming this person lied, this person lied, this person lied, this person lied, so everybody lied to get the defendant. And so here it's easy to sit back and say, wow, there must be some truth. If all these coming forward right now, there must be some truth to what they're saying, and he had to have been an animal, and he needs to speak about this. But why does he need to speak? He can't win. They can't sue him. They can't prosecute him. All the statutes are blown here, and if they do, they'll probably get sanctioned and have to pay his legal fees if anybody tries to do anything. So there's nowhere for them to go. There's nowhere for him to go. By him standing up and saying it's a lie, it's all a lie, are the people who are supporting these alleged victims, are they going to believe anything he says right now just because he says it didn't happen? No, they're not going to believe it. At all times, when these issues have arisen years and years ago, he has flatly, unequivocally denied they ever took place. So now, what's he supposed to do now? Go on 60 Minutes and say,